So today we're working on a Grenita machine, starting off by cleaning out this coil because as you can see it's very dirty. It's pretty nasty. It's nice slushy consistency. Can't see the auger now because of the size of the ice crystals. If we look at our dump rate on this, you can see that it is dropping nicely. Seems like the right consistency. Stuff that you can kind of look for on these. You want to inspect your auger. Make sure that there's no cracks, that everything is good and tight on the actual auger itself. We're not really getting any weird clicking. For the controls on this one, there's just the main switch, and then you can turn the turning on like that. So of course that's what's happening with the other one. And this auger also looks good, but we're missing the parts for here, so we didn't top off that side. And then these switches here actually control the refrigeration for it. So if you put it in this mode, then it will just cool this based off of temperature. There's actually a thermostat probe right here. Follow that back, it comes over to one of these thermostats. So there's a pair of thermostats, but they're only used for keeping the mix cold if you're using it for like cold drinks, or overnight if you don't need the actual slushy ice. When you switch it to this mode, however, that's going to open up the solenoid valve here and send refrigerant up into here and actually start chilling this tumbler. There you can see it's starting to get cold. Obviously there's no mix in here. You cannot run these with water in them. If you were to just dump straight water in here, it would actually freeze up enough that it would cause resistance against the drive motor here. You can see this gearbox. Well, the motor's here and then the gearbox actually runs all the way up to here. But that can actually damage the machine, so never run these with water in them. And a lot of the time, that's actually the problem. People will thin out their mix a little bit too much, and if you add too much water to the mixture, then its freezing point is going to be high enough that the ice gets too thick and it just freezes up. So you got to make sure that you're within a certain range. They actually have a special cyclometer measuring device that you can test the sugar content. And it's supposed to be within, I think, like 6 to 10 bricks is the measurement that they use. So the mix that I'm using in here, I just mixed very precisely based on the instructions on that container. So I don't think it's any problem with the mix. The mix seems to be working fine in it. I think it was actually just the coil was plugged. But I'll show you how this works here. You can see there's an adjustment screw. When you turn this in, you're putting more resistance against this spring here. When you turn it out, you're putting less resistance. Tightening it in is going to increase the crystal size and the thickness of your slushy. Turning it out is going to decrease it. And that's simply because while this is moving, it's actually pushing this switch open and closed. So if the resistance is greater on the auger, it's going to hold it. I think that tells the machine that it's still needing to cool. But when the resistance is great enough that it holds it this way, then it's telling the machine that it doesn't have to cool. And what that switch right there actually goes down to is one of these solenoid valves. So there's just one compressor, one condensing coil, but there's two evaporators and two solenoid valves. And so depending on which one is calling, it just sends the liquid refrigerant up to that side. So that's why we can just run it with just this side. Very clever the way they've got it set up, because with this resistance mechanism here, you don't actually have the thermostat controlling when the thing can shut off or come on. It's all based on this spring tension here. So if your mix is getting way too thick and starting to like freeze the auger and cause problems that way, then you'll hear skipping. Sometimes they're set up such that they can skip here. If you hear like crunchy, skippy noises coming from inside of the gearbox assembly, you could have an issue there. Also nice that they send it with ports on it. Liquid port there, suction port there. I don't think it's really low on refrigerant. I was kind of thinking maybe it was low on refrigerant earlier because the condensing coil wasn't really getting that warm. But I think it's actually just doing a fine job of moving the heat because it really didn't take it that long to make this ice. So I'm super confused as to why this thing runs the compressor all the time With the switch on and these two in the even positions like that, there should be no refrigeration. We'll turn off both the gear motors as well. And you can see it sends power right away onto these two leads. These two leads are normally hooked to this relay and that starts the compressor, but I'm trying not to short cycle the compressor, so it should not be sending power to the compressor. I do not know why it's sending power to the compressor, unless there's a pressure switch, but I cannot find any pressure switch on the unit. So I don't really know why it would do that, but we're going to go ahead and switch this off. It seems like there absolutely has to be a pressure switch, but I cannot find it. Another thing that's kind of interesting is this seems to be like a very European made product. Like even like the small components, this relay was made in the European Union, and then this was made in Romania. The compressor itself was made in Slovakia, and then it has that like United Nations greenhouse gas sticker on the top. But these are made in Italy. Just kind of strange. Okay, so working on the Slushy Machine some more here, and I was really baffled when I put my gauges on to check the pressures. You can see we're running around 150 on the high side, which is not really ridiculous for 404A, and we're running in a deep vacuum on the low side, so I was kind of thinking it was low, so I added a few ounces of refrigerant to it just to see if it would change anything, and it really didn't change anything. I just allowed the system to continue running, and I switched it into standby mode. So on the switches here, if it's in this mode, then it refrigerates the left cylinder. This one here refrigerates the right cylinder. We're gonna leave both those just off for now. And then this controls the actual stirring action. So if we turn on the right one, you can see it stirs, and the left one, it stirs. But when it's in this middle position here, or in the night mode here, it is supposed to just refrigerate the liquid to around 40 degrees, like 39, 40 degrees. But the compressor continues running, and the way that it's wired, I could not figure out how it could possibly shut off the compressor unless it had like an internal pressure switch or something. Because if you look at this relay here, this wire goes down to the compressor, so when this relay closes it powers on the compressor, and these two wires here actually end up going directly to the power switch. So the only way to shut the compressor off on this thing is to actually cycle this switch to off, like that. So I was uncomfortable with the fact that the compressor just runs continuous and thought there must be some way for the compressor to shut off. So I contacted the company and they finally got back to me today. They're actually based out of like Spain. So the tech support that was calling me, his number was like from Spain, which is really weird, and he had a thick kind of British accent or something. But he told me that these systems actually just run the compressor continuously. So I asked him if they've had any trouble with like the compressors going bad prematurely, because it's really surprising to me. I've never seen a refrigeration circuit where the compressor just runs continually, pulling into a deep vacuum like this. And he said, no, not really. He said lots of these machines last many years and don't have an issue even running that compressor continually. So that is really interesting. He did also say, though, that the later models do have additional circuitry to actually cut the compressor off once it is not needed. So, like in the standby mode, all that's happening is these thermostats are cycling solenoids on and off to keep the liquid at the right temperature. And in the slushy mode, it's just using this switch right here, based off of the resistance of the slurry mixture as it's stirring. So really interesting though. Like I said, I've never seen a system set up this way, and it just had me sure that there was something I was missing, because I just did not believe that that compressor could just run all the time and be fine. But that's how it's set up and that's how it works. So pretty interesting to work on. I'm glad that they got back to me, because I just did not feel comfortable sending this thing back to the place that had us fixing it without actually knowing for sure that it was fine, because I just did not think there was any possible way that the compressor would just run continuous while the thing is powered, but that's how they do it. So anyway, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys later.